Look, and on the center, look at this. Look, if this doesn't scream Canada in the fall, I don't know what does. Guys, welcome back. Welcome back to a YAP session. Fall vibes are out today. Today, we're talking about Gigantamax. We've had our first official weekend of Gigantamax in Pokemon Go. Am I even in focus? Yes, I am in focus. Anyway, Gigantamax came out last weekend. I personally, I don't know how you guys did on it. I didn't really get the chance to do that much. We went out to Renfrew, which is a smaller town on the, I guess, outskirts of, sorry, I keep getting distracted, outskirts of Ottawa. And I made a meetup, tried to get as many people out there. We had a couple boys come out. If you that's you, you know. Shout out for you coming out. But yeah, we tried, we failed miserably. Now granted, that was a little bit on us because we weren't fully prepared, but also they're really tough. I saw Fleece King tweeting about how like 30 people were failing, 35 people were failing. And I think the lowest group I saw take them down, I heard that there was a group of 9 take them down. Now, first thing I want to address is that originally we thought we could only do them with 10. That's not exactly how it works. Actually, how it works is that Niantic says that with 10 people, it's most likely probable. So they say 10 to 40 people is recommended, but you can actually attempt Gigantamax with as many or as little people as you want. Well, not as many, you have a max of 40, but so that's good to know. So you can still do short man Gigantamax. And I think Zoe tweeted out that she's heard that some people did it with like 6 to 9 people. But of course that means you have fully powered up, probably level 50 Gigantamax counters, the best in the game, powered up to that's like end game high level stuff. So it is possible, but after, you know, the first day, second day of the weekend, people I saw on Twitter were taking them down with 15, 20 people pretty consistently, which granted is still a lot of people, and this feature is still probably most likely only available or very possible for people in cities or even in just towns with like bigger Pokemon Go, I guess, like communities or a presence. But if you do have the correct strategies, which we're gonna talk about today, what are the correct strategies, you can take these down, and they're not as hard as you thought. I think the reason people thought that they were really hard or why everybody had so much negative feedback, which I did as well, and I still do think they are too hard. But let me just say this, we were going into, I think Nick made a post about this, we were going into this just thinking they were going to be like raids where you could just go in with a big group of people and just easily take them down. But no, that's not the fact. Gigantamax is not a tap, just power through it kind of feature. It's actually a feature that's going to require some thinking, some strategy, which I appreciate. And I do understand the complications that do come with that, because especially, I'll tell you, this weekend when we were in Renfrew, we did have like 9 to 10 people join the lobbies, but the meetup I made, only like 4 people showed up to the meetup, 4 or 5 people. So being able to talk to the other trainers who might have been in their cars or in their houses or following from a distance because they're a little more socially anxious, which is honestly completely fair. I completely understand it. Unfortunately, Gigantamax, though, it doesn't really work like that because there's actually strategy involved. So you need to actually be able to communicate with the people. Like if we were people at this Gigantamax and there's a Gigantamax raid or battle right here, I need to be able to talk to them because I need to be able to say like, hey, you're going to have the role of the tank. You're going to have the role of the healer or an attacker. And like that stuff we're going to talk about today. I'm going to explain exactly what that stuff means and what you should be following for Gigantamax. But it is like a huge downside if your people don't come to the meetups, or if they're hiding, or if they're socially shy, because communication is the #1 key to take down, the #1 tip to take down Gigantamax. Nonetheless, welcome to the YAP session. That was a little pre-YAP. It's already been 4 minutes. That's insane. I'm going to go ahead and find a seat. First thing we have to talk about, Gigantamax is actually getting changed. Niantic did take the feedback. I know a lot of you guys said it's too hard. I said it's too hard as well. I don't even have 1 Gigantamax Pokemon in my account yet. So Niantic did take some feedback, so we're going to talk about that and the changes coming to Gigantamax Gengar, which is dropping on Thursday, I believe the day after you're watching this video, or I don't know, maybe it's the day you're watching this video. So changes to Gigantamax Gengar coming, which is hype. But then also after that, we're going to talk about how to take down Gigantamax, the best tips. I actually made a tweet tweeting out saying, yo, what are some tips for Gigantamax? So a lot of these are from the community because personally, I didn't really get the chance to try them out or successfully take them down. So we're gonna go through those. Let me go find a seat in this beautiful fall foliage. Yeah, let's talk about how to take down the big man. That's what I'm gonna call them. It's actually kind of funny. Gigantamax just looks like a Pokemon, but it's the size of a building. Anyway, can you see me, hear me? The vibes are good. Okay, Gigantamax, I wanna sit on this. I do have, by the way, my gloves on, and the hand warmer. I don't know if you guys can see this, but what I'm holding in my hand, you can search these online pretty easily, but they are a rechargeable, is that a woodpecker? Rechargeable hand warmer, which is just like a brick that gets really hot. Really, I almost dropped it. Really good for anybody who, I guess, like plays Pokemon Go in an area where it gets colder. This is the only way I really get through the winter playing Pokemon Go. Nonetheless, changes to Gigantamax. Let me pull up the screen recording. I made a tweet about this. Plenty of people made a tweet about this. If you're wondering where this is even coming from, this is actually coming from Niantic themselves. So people always wonder, like, does Niantic actually take feedback? Niantic always hears feedback. Do they always take it? Not fully, but there was so much feedback being given from the community, from the creators, from people just experiencing this new feature, which granted is always going to be a thing. And it was all being relayed back to Niantic. They were checking out social channels, through their direct channels, all that stuff. And Niantic decided for Gigantamax Gengar to make 3 major changes. Let's go through the 3 major changes. First of all, 25k dust rewards to help replenish from powering up D-Max. So anytime you take down a D-Max Gengar, and by the way, these changes are coming to Dynamax Gengar and future Dynamax bosses. However, they're not yet going to change Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur if they end up coming back. Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur are not going to come back. But these changes aren't coming to those bosses, which is interesting. At least that's kind of like the clarification they wanted us to give. So that is something to note. But anyway, a huge problem is that people didn't have time to, I guess, prep for D-Max or for Gigantamax by powering up your Dynamax Pokemon. We didn't have the resources. You know, it wasn't really like, there was no slow buildup. So Niantic is going to increase the Stardust rewards, which is amazing. 25k Dust rewards is actually huge for any time you take down a Gigantamax boss, which is huge because, again, we need resources to power up our Dynamax Pokemon to take down these Pokemon in the first place. So we want to make sure that we're getting what we invest back. And that's what Niantic's done. I think it's a great change. Honestly, might actually become one of the best ways to grind Stardust in Pokemon Go as well. 25k dust is a lot of dust. You can multiply this on a star piece. I believe it ended up at 37k dust. And then also, you know how you can pay to double your rewards? I'm curious if you can pay 200 Pokecoins to double your G-Max rewards. That might be the most pay, well, it wouldn't fully be paid for Stardust, but it would be pretty close to it because as long as you have a big group and you can take down Gigantamax bosses, you can play 200 Pokecoins to double your dust rewards. I'm not sure if that's exactly how it's going to work, but there is the option to double your rewards for coins in D-Max bosses. So that could be arguably the best. Like, imagine you pay 200 coins, you double your rewards, that's 50k dust on a star piece, 75k dust for 200 Pokecoins for taking out. That's like, it's going to make Stardust purchasable. You do like 10, 15 Dynamax bosses, 1 million Stardust? We'll have to wait and see if that's exactly the case, but that could be huge in terms of grinding Stardust, and could, like, that's going to make Stardust pretty pay to win, in my opinion. Nonetheless, I do appreciate the change. Easier catch rate on G-Max Gengar, most likely as well in future raid bosses. I never had the chance to catch them, so I don't know how hard they were to catch, but I did hear they were similar to legendaries. So it's always nice, especially after you put in so much effort, to be guaranteed in catching the D-Max boss. This is just a good change, and honestly a change I think they should make to raids as well. Raids are tough to take down. Like, once you take it down, there shouldn't be another challenge on top of that. The raid itself is the challenge. Finally, slightly decreasing difficulty. Now, Niantic did state that, like, and I fully agree with this, I do think that there is place in the game for a very, very challenging end game content that isn't available to everybody. I don't think that, like, every feature in the game should be like, oh, you can just hop in, take advantage. Like, I do appreciate the difficulty. However, I do think it's a balance. There is a balance in life where if you go too far to the difficult stage, it's like you're still going to get people trying it, but a lot of people are going to be pushed against it because they're going to be like, I'm never going to be able to even attempt that. Like, they don't see the hope and the glimmer of potential of being able to take down a D-Max boss. I'm recording, right? Sorry, I literally just had a random thought that I wasn't recording. Anyway, what I was saying, I do think there is a balance in how hard you make a raid boss. Oh my God. I can't get up. Okay, how hard you make a raid boss or a Dynamax boss. And I think Niantic swung it a little bit too far in the direction of impossible. So it's nice to see that they're slightly decreasing difficulty. When I say slightly decreasing, like, what does that mean? Like, does that mean you can do it with 2 less players, 5 less, you know? Probably not going to be a big change, probably going to be pretty similar. But I do appreciate they're dropping it because, again, I do think it's a little bit too rough in one direction. And I want to say one thing as well. We do want to give, like, I guess a little leniency to Niantic. They did just drop this feature. They did what they thought would be the best. They're taking feedback, they're changing things now. So, like, I think Gigantamax especially is going to be a feature where, like, over time, it will fit its mold a lot better because they will find that exact difficulty point where it works. You know, it's not too hard, it's not too easy, and it's a good balance. And I think the same thing goes with everything else with the dust rewards. Who knows, the dust rewards might get nerfed, they might get buffed even more. Same thing with how hard that, like, all this stuff will change over time, and I think we kind of have to remember that, is that hopefully these things will keep changing over time, not stay stagnant, and they'll continue to improve with the times, if that makes sense. So I do appreciate Niantic going and coming and making these changes. Hopefully that improves Gigantamax. Nonetheless, Gigantamax is still going to be tough to take down, so we want to make sure we're following the correct strategies to take down these Pokemon. And yeah, I guess following, like, what we should, like, just what's the strategy? That's pretty much the question. What are the tips and the strategies? Let me go find a new spot to sit. There's a dog behind me, and let's talk about top tips to take down Gigantamax Pokemon. Okay. Gigantamax to the max, gigantic to the max. Anyway, let's talk about some tips and strategies. So first I'm gonna go through some stuff that I kind of didn't come up with myself, but I've heard a lot in the community, and some tips. By the way, does the sun look how nice the sun looks behind me? I think the vibes are better this way. Which way should we point the camera? Anyway, we'll just go with this direction. So let's talk about those. Okay, first thing that's most important when it comes to taking down Gigantamax is going to be to, of course, power up your Pokemon and increase their moves. It's the same thing with raids. Like, when you go into a raid boss, a raid battle, you don't go in with just a Pokemon you freshly caught. You're going up with a top counter. You're going up with a Palkia that you powered up and have the correct moves on. Same thing goes with Dynamax. You can't, and like, again, I no fault to anyone because Dynamax just came out 2 months ago. Not a lot of people have good IV Dynamax Pokemon. They don't want to power up these Pokemon, especially when Gigantamax Pokemon are going to make them irrelevant because Gigantamaxes are better at taking down Gigantamaxes than Dynamaxes are at taking down Gigantamaxes, if that makes sense. So, like, there's not really a lot of use. But anyway, you still have to power up your Pokemon. So what you can do is you can come in here, you can search Dynamax. It'll show you all your Dynamax mons. Highly recommend you come in here, you check out these Pokemon, you look for your good IV ones. For example, this Wooloo, which is a 96. The only one I ended up powering up this weekend because Charizard was the easiest Gigantamax boss to take down, which I'll talk about a strategy later about that, was this Blastoise. I had a 98 Blastoise I caught from a D-Max raid. I powered it up, I gave it an Elite TM, gave it Hydro Cannon, and I maxed out its max move. But I could have done even more to this. Now, this is where the resources come in. We talked about them changing Gigantamax. Like, it does cost a lot to do this. You need a party of 3 Pokemon, so you can really only go with 3 Pokemon. So theoretically, you at max are going to spend 1.5 million dust if you're powering up 3 Pokemon to level 50. But not everyone can do that. Not everyone could just go around throwing and being like, oh, I'm going to power up 3 Pokemon level 50. And then it's also like, hey, if you're going up against Venusaur Gigantamax, you don't want the same Pokemon versus Charizard Gigantamax. It's not like there's a one-size-fits-all Pokemon, if that makes sense. So that's really the number one thing. Now, the number one tip I'll give you here, and you'll see by my lucky double, is you can actually trade Dynamax Pokemon. It doesn't count as a special trade. So if you and your friend go out and do a bunch of Dynamax bosses, the best thing to do is just mirror trade them after, try to get some Luckies, which have good IVs, and then also the Luckies, also the Lucky Pokemon will be cheaper to power up. They're going to be half the dust to power up. For example, this doubling, level 15 this double will only be 250k dust, so it's going to be cheaper. Anyway, so highly recommend you go ahead and do that. Power up your Pokemon. Now let's talk about max moves. There's 3 max moves in Pokemon Go. There's a little question mark explaining each. Max Geyser or max whatever, it might change the name, is going to be your attack move. It's going to follow the type of your fast move. So whatever your fast move type is what your max move is going to do. This is what's going to do the most amount of damage. Your Dynamax or your Gigantamax max moves when you're Dynamax, those 3 turns you get, are the biggest damage dealers. Those are the most important in the Dynamax battles. It's not really your little fast moves or anything like that that's going to do much. You then have max guard. It's going to create a barrier that reduces damage taken. I always relate it to Fortnite, how you can drink your blue shield. That's what using max guard does. Finally, max spirit raises the spirit of users and allies Pokemon recovering their HP. This is more of a healer move to have, where you can use it and it'll heal your Pokemon. Now remember, once all 3 of your Pokemon are dead, you're out of the battle. So it's very important to check your health and heal accordingly, and not just only be doing damage the whole time. So max spirit is very important, very underutilized, and it's important, and a tip I'm going to talk about later is to have one healer on each team that instead of using max geyser or max guard, they're actually using max spirit every time they go ahead and Dynamax, so they can go ahead and heal the people in their party. Because remember, you go into Gigantamax bosses split up into groups of 4. There's a max of 40 people, so you can have a max of 10 different teams going in, but you're going to be stuck with a group of 4 trainers. So you're not actually going to be interacting with any of the other 40 people in the, or up to 40 people in the battle, only those 4. So every group of 4 should have one healer healing up the Pokemon so that you guys are not dying. Because again, if your whole team, everybody dies, then your team's out. You guys can't do anything. But if you have someone healing and keep you guys alive, you're going to have much more longevity in the damage you're doing. Now, all these moves can be unlocked by using max particles, candy, and you can even level them up to max using XL candy, Candy XL. So that's an option to do. I highly recommend you always max out your max move, your max attack move if you're an attacker. And if you're the healer on the team, go ahead and max out your max spirit. That's definitely going to be an essential thing you want to go ahead and do. Now, there's kind of like an interesting thing that I read. Let me actually pull up this right here. Gigantamax Gengar counters. I saw this really good post talking about Gigantamax Gengar here. It's on Reddit. Shout out to Joltar here. So he's saying, today was somewhat of a mess. You know, no one really knew what was going on with all the Gigantamax Charizards and Blastoise and stuff. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit, but right now we're going to focus on Gigantamax Gengar because that's the next one coming up. But what they said here is Gigantamax Gengar is coming. However, most people are expecting to use 3 Gengars and off to the races. I disagree, and there's a chance you're not lasting long given Gengar is made of tissue paper and going down quickly with 1 extra attacks. However, don't miss it. Don't dismiss it. So going into Gigantamax Gengar, we're going to look at what are the best counters for it. Gigantamax Gengar is going to be a poison and ghost type, making it weak to dark, ghost, ground, psychic. I think that's it. Ghost? No, I think that's it. Anyway, weak to a bunch of things. The best counter probably is going to be Gigantamax or Dynamax Gengar, because Dynamax Gengar is a ghost type, has a really high attack stat, it's a good attacker. You can also use Metagross because it has psychic moves, but Metagross also just doesn't do as much damage. You could use Greedent. Greedent is going to be a, oh my god, my camera's gonna die. Do I have to finish this video at home? It might be best. Okay, hold up. I'm gonna go back home. I know we're gonna lose this scenery. Enjoy it while you can, but I forgot to bring an extra battery and my camera's about to die. So cut to home where we'll talk about more of this. Okay, we are back. This is probably gonna turn into kind of like almost a regular video now. This is the room, by the way. Anyone who hasn't seen it, we got the Pokédaxi sign up here above the door. Put some stuff up. It's still a little bit of a work in progress. The setup is not finalized, but hopefully you don't mind this. Okay, so anyway, if you don't know, there is no switch timer on how quickly you can go ahead and switch in a Gigantamax battle. So that means that you can switch whenever you want. You can switch from your first to your second to your third Pokemon, because you can bring up to 3 Pokemon, which allows you to have this strategy, and you can use this for all future Gigantamax bosses, where you have a tank and you have an attacker. So you're going to want to have one Pokemon that has a really high DPS, does a lot of damage, and specifically this Pokemon is the Pokemon you're going to be Gigantamaxing or Dynamaxing and using your max attack move on. And then you have a tank Pokemon, which is more of a bulky Pokemon, which you can go ahead and use to heal your Pokemon, etc., etc. So the strategy here is your main attacker is going to be Gengar. Bring only one, put it in the back of your party. What many don't know is there's no switch timer in these raids, unlike things in PvP, so make sure making switches fast, and so making switches is fast and easy to do, meaning you can switch Gengar, sitting in the back of your party, fire off 3 max moves before you switch back. So you can go ahead and pretty much what you do is use Greedent, you tank moves, and you charge up your max meter, and once your max meter is almost there, switch into Gengar, complete your max meter, Gigantamax with Gengar or Dynamax with Gengar, use your 3 max moves, your max attacks, do huge damage because it's such a high damage Pokemon, and then switch back into Greedent. Now, the reason we're going to have Greedent as our tank is because Greedent is a normal type, meaning that almost every move from Gigantamax Gengar will be resisted or double resisted because you're a normal type, except for Focus Blast. That is one move you have to watch out for. We'll talk about how to get around that. But anyway, Bite and Crunch, dealing super effective damage, lets you charge up energy pretty fast, as usual, but the main focus here is the fact that Greedent is immune to Ghost and can take hits pretty well. So pretty much you're going to have 2 Greedents and a Gengar. That's the strategy of 2 tanks, and then you have your attacker in the back. Now, you can even have a strategy where you could theoretically bring in 3 Gengars and then have one person in your team, like we talked about before, have more of a healer role where they bring 3 Greedents, and what you're doing is you're just spamming attacks with Gengar, and then the person who's running the Greedent is just going to keep spamming Max Spirit every time they Dynamax to go ahead and heal up your Gengar. So that's another strategy you can go ahead and do. But anyway, they have the tank Blastoise. If you don't have a good Greedent or a good IV Greedent, you can use Blastoise as well. Blastoise does have Bite, which means it can go ahead and use the Max Darkness move. And it is more of a tanky Pokemon. But Greedent is obviously going to be the better choice. We also have Metagross here. It's weak to Ghost in this gen, so best to leave it at home. But if you want to invest in Gengar of your own, you can go ahead and use it. But yeah, honestly, Greedent is going to be the better choice, or Blastoise. And then they have a couple other options as well. Double is another option on here. Gengar is immune to all of its fast moves and max moves, so it's not great. But double is normal, so it can be used as a tank, I guess. Anyway, the final thing they wrote here, Cheer. Pretty much useless if if you're in a party by yourself, so avoid that as much as possible. Check if there's a 3-person lobby that you can join, which would be benefit from you, as there's more if you do lose all your Pokemon. The Cheer option raises Dynamax energy gauge, so that's the reason. Okay, so they're pretty much just saying you can switch parties once you're knocked out, and don't cheer in a party if you're all alone. Anyway, so yeah, that is pretty much the strategy for Gigantamax Gengar, and also just a strategy you can go ahead and take on with other Pokemon. Now, I do want to mention Focus Blast. If they do have Focus Blast to Gengar, you can actually dodge in Gigantamax raids, and it's actually not a bad choice to make because these Gigantamax bosses do so much damage. So dodging their moves can have much more value than they would in raids. Like if you dodge in raids, it's good, but you can still usually take hits, and it's actually usually better just keep tapping and getting your charge moves off. But since the most damage you're going to do in a Gigantamax boss is your Dynamax move, so when you're Dynamax or Gigantamax, that's when most of the damage is being done. So that's the priority. The priority is to get to that point and keep your Pokemon alive to that point. So dodging your the Gigantamax boss's max moves or moves that they're going to go ahead and throw at you is essential. Now, similar to raids, there's going to be like white lines or like lines that come on the screen, and also there's going to be a text in the corner telling you when they go ahead and attack, or they're about to attack. And what you can do is you can swipe left or right to go ahead and dodge the move. So I highly recommend doing that, especially if you're running Greedent against the Gigantamax Gengar and it has Focus Blast. That move's going to do a lot of damage, so it's highly recommended to try to dodge that move. The other moves you can go ahead and just take a hit, but that's going to move is probably going to do the most damage to your Greedent. So again, party of 2 Greedents, bring a Gengar in the back, charge up your max meter as much as you can, and then when your max meter is almost done, switch into your Gengar, hit them with the 3 max moves, Max Photon Blast or whatever it's called. Big damage on Gengar, switch back, and then also have 1 healer on your team. Or maybe just like one person just bring 3 Greedents, and instead of doing the switch strategy for them, they just go ahead and Dynamax their Greedent and use Max Spirit. And again, power up your max moves as well. Use that use the max particles in the candies. Specifically, like on the Greedents, you don't really need to power up because that's not what you're doing. But on the Gengar, max your move. And if you're the healer of the team, max your Max Spirit move because you want to make sure you're getting the most amount of healing as you can. Nonetheless, that's kind of the strategy going on. This is a strategy you can also follow. Let's talk about, I guess, Blastoise, Charizard, and Venusaur for a bit. Now, these guys came out absolute tanks of Pokemon, super hard to take down. I saw Zoe made a video. The best strategy was that Charizard was the easiest to take down. If you took down a Charizard, you could then take down multiple Charizards. Once you had 3 Charizards, you go ahead and use those to take down Venusaur, get 3 Venusaurs, and then use the Venusaurs against Blastoise. Because one thing I don't know if I mentioned yet is that Gigantamax Pokemon are much stronger in Dynamax battles, especially their max moves do a lot more damage than Dynamax Pokemon themselves. So using Gigantamax against Gigantamax is obviously going to be the better option. The problem with it, though, is, again, especially for that last weekend, is that you go ahead and take down a Gigantamax Charizard. Do you really want to just fully invest all your resources into this Gigantamax Charizard, even if its IVs are trash, just because it's good? You know what I mean? So, like, it's kind of a tough situation to kind of be in. But Gigantamax Pokemon are very strong. There's not really any one that stands out to use against Gengar, but in the future, you know, if we get Gigantamax, I don't know, Melmetal, for example, using a Gigantamax Charizard will most likely be the best option and the best way to do the most amount of damage. So that is something to go ahead and note. Nonetheless, Gigantamax, the strategy in the future, if we do get the Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard back, is again, similar strategy. Have a Pokemon, 2 Pokemon on your team that are more of a tank role to just go ahead and soak hits while you build your max meter. And then a Pokemon you can switch into Gigantamax, attack, switch out. Kind of like a bait and switch tactic. So with Charizard, for example, I'm trying to think right now, what can take a lot of hits from a Charizard? Probably like a Blastoise, like 2 Blastoises. And then honestly, like Blastoise is probably going to be the best attacker against this as well. So actually, team of 3 Blastoise, very, very simple. But if there are Gigantamax Pokemon or Dynamax Pokemon that come out that are more glass cannons that can hit really, really hard, but can't really take hits, that's when those Pokemon will have more of a healer role, I guess you could say. Anyway, last thing I want to go ahead and do now is go ahead through the post I made, because I did make a post, and I highly recommend, I'm actually going to link this below, that breaks down a lot of tips, people who were actually had success taking down Gigantamax Pokemon, and it breaks down a lot of tips. Anyway, let's go through Zoe. Someone had a detailed comment on my Gigantamax video, how their hardcore group got 6 to 9 done. With a lot of struggle and frustration, but apparently possible. I'll pin it for you so you can read it. Okay, actually, we're going to go check that out after. Let's go through these first. Did 41 total raids, got a shiny, got lucky on the shiny rate. We were able to do 13-person solo on the Charizard last raid because I maxed out my Blastoise. Generally speaking, I think between 20 and 30 people is adequate to defeat all 3 bosses if Pokemon are leveled up to level 40 plus. Designate a healer, a max attacker, and a max guarder. Now, one thing I actually do want to mention, Max Spirit heals everybody. Max Guard only does yourself. So I do think Max Guard has a little bit less use, in my opinion, than Max Attack and the Max Heal. But something to know. Rural people, stay away from it. Facts. Volunteer to walk all the dogs to the local animal shelter. Give each the dogs. Okay, this is just a meme. Worst case scenario, you spend the time with the dogs. True. Get the dogs to do it, pretty much. People need to stop thinking what counters are G-Max Pokemon. Many times I did see people using Charizard against Blastoise or Wooloo against their boss. People need to evolve them. If they can't, make their buddy to gain candy that way. Counters are a huge part of this. Yes, 100% counters. Using the right Pokemon, very, very important. I'm actually going to start a new series here on the Shorts channel where we talk about the best Pokemon and strategies to take down Gigantamax bosses. It might end up becoming a full-length video thing because Gigantamax is actually tougher than raids. So anyway, you can indefinitely swap Pokemon even while Dynamaxing. So what our group did was have a tanky lead that filled the meter and not die. And then, of course, you Dynamax. So yeah, this is the strategy we just talked about. Found this on Reddit. Metagross's MVP as a healing Pokemon on Venusaur and Blastoise. Bringing the same type of Pokemon against Venusaur as a healing Pokemon is also extremely useful. That's actually a good point. If you use a Charizard versus a Charizard, you actually generally will resist all the moves because usually the same type resists each other. Like, for example, water resists water, grass resists grass. So using a Gigantamax Venusaur against a Gigantamax Venusaur and using it as more of a healer tank role, not a bad strategy. Anyway, such as Venusaur against Venusaur, we were 20 people but had a few children present who only had underleveled and useless mons. Too long, don't read. Make sure you have at least one strong party, which can basically stay alive indefinitely. Key is healing. Damage will come by itself. Communication is important. Dodge attacks. Don't bring low level Pokemon. Very, very true. The hardest part is not the battle itself, but getting the Pokemon to do it. A lot of groups have failed because they were too small, but they weren't prepared. Interesting. Here are some tips I posted for my community and shared. Okay, let's read these. These are very difficult battles, and you will not be able to shortman these. Plan up with others. Have a lot of people. Don't be afraid to fail. You only lose MP if you complete the battle. Very true. Max your attacks. Evolving Pokemon is good, but maxing your moves is a priority if you're low on resources. Max Spirit can drastically change the outcome of the battle. If you have resources you can invest, I cannot recommend it enough. Yes, one healer per 4 trainers is very useful. There's a small Dynamax button that pops up during the battle. You cannot tap it. Yeah, you have to swipe your Pokemon over to it. Very important to get more Dynamax meter and Dynamax faster. The 3 yellow lines above your Pokemon means an attack is coming. Dodge if you can. These battles are not timed. They're based on a Pokemon left overall from all participants. So longevity is key here. Yes, no timer on these battles, remember. So like dodging, healing, all this stuff, much, much more useful because you're not actually wasting time. You're actually you're making the time you can be in the battle a lot longer. So remember, there's no time limit on these. When your party dies, make sure to keep tapping to the cheer button. The harder you cheer, the faster remaining Pokemon can Dynamax. So go ahead and remember to cheer. If you fail, go reattempt these battles and will reroll. Wait, if you fail, go and reattempt these battles, can and will reroll movesets. So these aren't like raids where you can switch out teams. Oh, yes. Okay. Interesting. So the Pokemon, the move that the Gigantamax Pokemon has is going to reroll every single time. Instead, in raids, if you don't own raids, once you know a raid's moveset, you can go ahead and back out and switch your Pokemon accordingly and then go back in. Not facts for Gigantamax. Interesting. Max Guard shields you. Max Spirit will heal your mini group of 4. Both Party Play and Friendship don't provide any boost. Gigantamax Pokemon are tradable, but they are special trades. Yes, that is something very interesting. Gigantamax Pokemon can be shiny. The catch rate is trash. Use Golden Raspberries. Yeah, hopefully that gets increased. These cannot be remoted, and you currently cannot Gigantamax your Dynamax Pokemon. Anyway, really, really good tips. Thank you. Shout out to Mexi Liz. I did Blastoise out of 32 Raiders and then failed to catch the damn thing. So far, I hate this new feature. Just annoys me seeing more things on the map I can't take on. Interesting. Not verified, so can't text all, but here's how my community was able to beat 32 G-Max raids over the weekend. Okay, let's read this. This was the basics of some of us went into the raids on Saturday. At least two of each typing in the final evolution, with them at least being powered up at level 30 to 40, and at least to have each move up to level 2 besides the guard, which was the most useless one even at 3. Yeah, agreed. I don't think guard has as much use. The first raid, we have 23 people, and we almost beat it first try. After seeing how everything went, we tried again and won. These things took from the things we took from the encounter was to have at least 1 to 2 people in each sub-team essentially healing their team each Dynamax damage phase. That mitigated most of all the damage where we were building the bar in the back. The biggest help was honestly cheering. If you had people cheering you on, you essentially locked them on you're fighting against out of damaging you, since you were able to unleash the max bar so quickly and just healing or damaging the boss. Interesting. We used this for every single raid, and we ran yesterday and today. Once you got a D-Max Mon, you caught it. Made it easy to fight easier because you could just use a tank to build the meter and then switch your G-Max Mon in for the 3-second countdown to maximize your damage output. Hopefully this helps everyone. So yeah, the general strategy we're seeing here is that you should go ahead and follow the tank and then switch into your D-Max Mon to go ahead and battle it. Have 1 healer, maybe 2 on each team, just spamming Max Spirit to keep your team up. Don't worry about time. It's all about surviving as long as you can. And yeah, overall that. Now, one thing I do want to do, let's go ahead and let's take a look at Zoe's video, because I am curious. I'm curious how someone was able to go ahead and take it down. That's crazy, with 6 to 9 people. Oh my god. Oh my god. There's a G-Max Kingler. Okay, let's go. I'm in a hardcore group with 6 to 7 people. We had a really tough time, but we did manage to scrape by all the max Metagrosses with all this max moves, so it can tank. We also maxed the type effectiveness of Pokemon to deal some more damage. I will say, if you don't use Metagross, it will be impossible to take down with 6 to 9 players, because the moves on the bosses use are just so strong. I would say 6 people is the lowest that you could use, because it came down to the very last sliver of health with our Pokemon. But me and my group decided we will not be attempting something like this again for Gigantamax, because it's too difficult. We had to redo it at least 10 times before we could beat 1. And then once we did, we were pretty annoyed to see that we didn't get that many balls. One of our people in our group didn't catch it, ended up throwing his phone. Oh my god. This was just a very big blunder by Niantic, and just try to rally a few people so we can have an easier time. Conclusion took 1 hour and 50 minutes to do it. Put everything perfectly so you don't have to... So if you don't have... Okay, anyway, they're just saying that they don't like the feature. That's fair. Anyway, that's kind of crazy. Okay, so they were using maxed out Metagrosses. I'm guessing they were using them against Venusaur. I don't think 6 to 9 people is possible for every single G-Max boss. I think it's going to be a G-Max boss possibility or potential. But I do think, like, 12 people, 3 parties of 4. If you guys use the strategy where you have 2 tanks and then a attacking Pokemon, you switch out when you're about to Dynamax, you go ahead and have 1 person healing you. Theoretically, as long as your Pokemon are powered up, your max moves are increased, you shouldn't have too big of an issue with Dynamax. But again, it is the strategy. You got to follow the strategy. So make sure you follow the strategy, talk to the players, communicate, I would recommend you guys grouping up into your groups of 4 when you're at the D-Max boss, tapping and being like, yo, okay, I need a heal. Are you going to heal? Yes. He's going to heal. I'm going to keep attacking, blah, blah, blah. That's the strategy. Anyway, guys, this is the YAP session. Sorry we had to finish at home. Kind of sucks because I did really enjoy the fall, but it is kind of cold outside. Anyway, that's the strategy for taking out G-Max. Good luck with G-Max Gengar. I'm going to be using this strategy, and we're going to be live streaming it. So I highly recommend you check out the video below. Join the live stream if you want to see some of this all in action being taken down. hopefully we're able to take them down. I'm not gonna lie, my Gmax Pokemon or Dmax Pokemon aren't the best, so hopefully you can improve them. But anyway, appreciate y'all tuning in to the YAP session. Again, YAP sessions are gonna continue coming out before it gets too cold. So stay tuned for one next week, which we're most likely gonna be talking about the avatars and how yeah, they haven't been changed, because I thought they were gonna get improved over time, but it seems like avatars still suck in Pokemon Go. Anyway, appreciate y'all. We'll catch y'all next one. Follow tips. Peace.